In a game of shadows where nothing is what it seems, a blind young woman and her former combat dog face a deadly secret that could destroy everything they know and maybe even the country itself. The autumn sun in Boston painted the Crawford mansion with golden hues, while Olivia, seated in the garden, stroked Thor, her Rottweiler. The delicate fingers of the 17-year-old girl moved through the black fur of the animal, finding security in that contact. Her eyes, seemingly fixed on the horizon, couldn't see the beauty around her, a consequence of a childhood accident that had left her blind. "Thor, sometimes I feel like you're the only one who really sees me," she whispered, as the dog responded, with a slight growl of approval. The sound of high heels on marble announced the arrival of Hannah Crawford, her mother. The CEO of CyberShield, one of the largest cybersecurity companies in the country, carried with her the characteristic perfume and impeccable posture that had made her one of the most powerful women in America. "Olivia, dear, shouldn't you be preparing for your lessons?" asked Hannah, her voice soft but firm. "Mom, today it's been 2 years," Olivia replied, her face turning toward her mother's voice. 2 years since Dad left us." Hannah sighed, adjusting her impeccably aligned blazer. "I know, sweetie. Anthony's absence still weighs on us every day," she paused. "But as your father always said, life continues spinning with or without our permission." Thor stood up, suddenly alert, positioning himself between Olivia and a staff member who was approaching. The animal's behavior wasn't just protective, there was something almost military in his posture. "Mrs. Crawford, Mr. Anderson is on the go." "Phone? He says it's urgent," informed the butler. Hannah frowned. "I'll take it in the office," she turned to her daughter. "We'll talk later, dear." When her mother walked away, Olivia leaned toward Thor. "They're always hiding something, Aunt." "They, boy," she murmured, getting up with the help of her cane. "Let's take a walk around the garden." Olivia navigated the space with the confidence of someone who knew every inch. Even without vision, she had mentally mapped the entire property. Thor walked by her side, vigilant. Together they headed to Anthony Crawford's old office, a room that had remained untouched since his departure. The smell of wood and old books invaded her nostrils when she opened the door. Thor entered first, as if checking if the environment was safe. Olivia slid her fingers over the furniture, feeling the thin layer of dust that was beginning to accumulate. "Dad, what were you hiding?" she whispered to herself. The phone in her pocket vibrated. It was Richard Anderson, the family's former head of security. "Olivia, we need to talk," the deep voice sounded from the other end of the line. "Meet me tomorrow at Riverfront Cafe at 3. Come with Thor and don't tell your mother." Before she could respond, he hung up. Olivia felt a shiver run down her spine. In the main room of the mansion, Hannah was ending her call, her face pale. Victor Mitchell, the telecommunications magnate, had been clear. The Prometheus project needed to be recovered, or the consequences would be disastrous. She looked out the window, observing her daughter in the garden with Thor, and felt the weight of a secret that threatened to destroy everything she had built. "Anthony, why did you leave this to our daughter?" Hannah whispered to herself, as a solitary tear ran down her perfectly made-up face. Night fell over Boston, bringing with it silence and mystery. In the Crawford mansion, 3 figures remained awake. Hannah, in her office, reviewing confidential files. Olivia, in her room, repeatedly touching a small medallion her father had given her. And Thor, motionless at the foot of his owner's bed, watchful eyes fixed on the door, as if expecting danger could arrive at any moment. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We continue. The following morning brought with it Boston's characteristic grey sky. Olivia woke up with Thor licking her hand, a morning ritual that served as an alarm clock. She got up, feeling the texture of the cashmere blanket under her fingers. One luxury among many others that filled her life, but not the emptiness she felt. "Good morning, buddy," she said, stroking the Rottweiler's head. "We have an important meeting today." As she prepared, Olivia thought about Richard's call. The former head of security had been practically an uncle to her all these years. After her father's departure, however, he had abruptly distanced himself, resigning from his position without much explanation. Her mother had said it was for personal reasons, but like so many other things, Olivia suspected there was more to that story. Downstairs, Hannah was having breakfast while reading reports on her tablet. "Good morning, dear," she greeted, looking up when Olivia entered the kitchen, guided by Thor. "Any plans for today?" Olivia hesitated for a second. "I thought about going to the mall with Sarah," she lied, referring to a schoolmate. "She wants to help me choose a gift for Aunt Marcy's birthday." Hannah studied her daughter for a moment, noticing the slight tension in her shoulders. After so many years observing people, she had developed an almost supernatural ability to detect lies, but she decided not to press. "Of course, dear. Be careful and keep your phone charged. And Thor, of course." "Always," Olivia replied, feeling a twinge of guilt for the lie. The hours dragged on until 3 in the afternoon. Accompanied by Thor and the family's trusted driver, Olivia arrived at Riverfront Cafe, a discreet establishment in the center of the city. The driver helped her out of the car. "I'll be right here, miss. Anything, just call." Olivia nodded, grateful. With Thor skillfully guiding her between the tables, she sensed the environment around her, the aroma of freshly ground coffee, the soft murmur of conversations, the clinking of cups. Thor led her to a table in the corner, where Richard was already waiting. "Olivia," the man's deep voice sounded familiar and comforting. "Thank you for coming." She sat down, feeling the tension emanating from him. "What's going on, Richard? Why all this mystery?" Richard sighed deeply, leaning in closer. "Olivia, what I'm going to tell you will change everything you think you know about your family, especially about your father." Thor, sitting next to Olivia, emitted a low grunt, as if understanding the seriousness of the conversation. "Your father wasn't the victim of an accident," Richard continued, his voice almost a whisper. "The helicopter was sabotaged." Olivia felt as if the air had been sucked from her lungs. "How can you be sure?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Because I investigated secretly. Anthony had instructed me to do so if anything happened to him." Richard paused. He knew he was in danger. The Prometheus project he developed, it wasn't just a technological innovation. It was a tool capable of detecting and proving manipulations in electronic voting systems. Olivia clutched the medallion she carried, with her the same one her father had given her. "That medallion," Richard began, noticing the gesture. "It's not just a memento, Olivia, it's a key. One of the 3 parts needed to access the complete files of Prometheus." A shiver ran down Olivia's spine. Fragmented memories began to come together. Her father whispering, "Guard this with your life." Thor being trained not just to be a guide dog, but a guardian. And her mother's increasingly strange behavior. "And my mother, does she know all this?" Richard's silence was answer enough. "Hannah is complicated," he finally said. "She and your father had different views on what to do with Prometheus. Anthony wanted to expose everything. Hannah, well, she has connections with powerful people who would be affected." A sudden noise made Thor go on alert. Richard looked over Olivia's shoulder, his face paling. "We need to go," he said abruptly. We were followed. Olivia felt her heart race. "By whom?" "By Olympus," Richard replied, standing up. "And believe me, they'll do anything to prevent the truth from coming out." "Thor, alert!" Richard commanded in a low but authoritative tone. The Rottweiler immediately assumed a different posture, his muscles tensing beneath his black fur. He was no longer just a guide dog, but a soldier ready for combat. "What's happening?" asked Olivia, her voice trembling. "2 men just came in. They were watching us from across the street," Richard explained, while discreetly removing something from the inside pocket of his jacket. "Olivia, take this. It's a flash drive with preliminary information about the project." She extended her hand, feeling the small metallic object slide between her fingers. Quickly, she tucked it into the inside pocket of her jacket. "How are we going to get out of here?" she asked, trying to stay calm. Richard analyzed the environment. The cafe had 2 exits, the main one, where the men had just entered, and a service exit in the back. "Through the back. Is your driver outside?" "Yes. In front." Richard thought quickly. "I'll send him a message to go around." Meanwhile, we'll move slowly toward the kitchen. They stood up, Richard guiding Olivia by the elbow, Thor following closely. They walked as if they were just heading to the bathroom, avoiding drawing attention. The two men, dressed in dark suits, began scanning the cafe with their eyes. One of them noticed Richard and Olivia's movement toward the back of the establishment. "They've seen us," Richard whispered, quickening his pace. "Quick!" They crossed the kitchen door, surprising the staff. Richard quickly explained that they needed to leave, inventing a family emergency. One of the cooks, sympathetic, indicated the back door. They exited into a narrow alley, just as they heard the kitchen door open again. The hurried footsteps of the pursuers echoed off the brick walls. "Run!" Richard ordered, firmly holding Olivia's arm. Thor took the lead, guiding them through the labyrinth of alleys. The dog seemed to know the way, as if he had been programmed for situations like this. "Richard, who are they?" asked Olivia, breathless. "Victor Mitchell's men," he replied as they turned into another alley. "He's one of the leaders of Olympus and was deeply involved with your father in business, until Anthony discovered the truth." They reached a busier street. The driver, responding to Richard's message, was already waiting for them with the car idling. "Miss Olivia," he exclaimed, quickly getting out to open the back door. "Get in," Richard ordered, practically pushing Olivia into the vehicle. Thor jumped in right behind her. "Where to, sir?" asked the driver, clearly confused by the situation. "Back to the mansion quickly," Richard replied, constantly looking behind. "And take different routes, avoid the obvious paths." In the back seat, Olivia tried to organize her thoughts. "Richard, I need to understand better. Who or what is Olympus?" Richard hesitated for a moment, considering how much he should reveal. Olympus. There was a select group of businessmen, politicians, and judges who manipulate the system behind the curtains, he finally explained. "Your father developed the Prometheus project as a way to detect electoral fraud, but when he realized how deep the corruption went, he decided to broaden the scope." "And my mother? What's her role in all this?" Richard looked out the window, watching Boston's streets pass by quickly. "Hannah met your father at university. They were brilliant, idealistic, but at some point their ideological paths separated. While Anthony continued to believe in transparency and justice, Hannah got closer to powerful people, saw opportunities." He paused. "I'm not saying she's their villain, Olivia. People are complex. She probably believes she's doing the right thing." "The right thing?" Olivia felt a wave of anger growing inside her. "She's protecting people who sabotaged my father's helicopter." Thor, sensing his owner's distress, rested his head on her knee. The simple gesture brought some comfort to the young woman. "I'm not sure if she knows everything," Richard replied. "Olympus operates in cells. Few members know the complete picture." The car made a sharp turn, throwing the passengers against the doors. "Sorry," said the driver, looking in the rearview mirror. "We have a vehicle following us." Richard turned around, spotting a black sedan that was approaching rapidly. "Try to lose them," he ordered, while taking a disposable cell phone from his pocket. "I need to make a call." Olivia felt fear growing inside her, but also a fierce determination. She pressed the medallion against her chest, thinking of her father and everything he had risked. Thor, by her side, emitted a low growl, as if promising that he would protect her at any cost. The car weaved through Boston streets, the driver maneuvering skillfully, while the black sedan remained persistently on their tail. Olivia, with Thor pressed against her in the back seat, felt every curve, every sudden acceleration, her heart hammering against her chest. "We're almost at the mansion," the driver informed, his voice tense, "but they're still following us." Richard, who had just ended his mysterious call, turned to Olivia. "We need to change plans. The mansion isn't safe." "I can't just disappear, Richard," protested Olivia. "My mother will call the police. The whole country will be looking for me." "That's exactly what they want," argued Richard. "The more visibility, the harder it will be for us to investigate discreetly." Olivia felt Thor stir beside her, as if the animal sensed her growing distress. "No," she said firmly. "I need to confront my mother. If she's involved in this, I want to hear it from her own mouth." Richard sighed heavily. He knew that determination It was the same he had seen so many times on Anthony Crawford's face. "All right," he gave in. "But at the first sign of real danger, you come with me. Promise." "I promise," replied Olivia, clutching the medallion between her fingers. The car finally entered through the gates of the Crawford mansion, the security guards immediately opening the way upon recognizing the vehicle. The black sedan slowed down and drove straight past, but everyone knew it wouldn't be the end of that pursuit. Hannah was in the entrance hall when they came in, her face a mask of concern that quickly transformed into shock at seeing Richard. "What is he doing here?" she asked, her tone icy. Thor positioned himself protectively next to Olivia, as if sensing the tension in the air. "He was protecting me, Mom," replied Olivia, her voice firmer than it had ever been when speaking to Hannah. "From men who followed us after our meeting at Riverfront Cafe." Hannah paled slightly, but composed herself with the speed of someone accustomed to dealing with crises. "Meeting? I thought you were with Sarah at the mall." "I lied," admitted Olivia, advancing with the help of her cane. "Just as you've been lying to me for years." Richard remained silent, carefully observing the interaction between mother and daughter. Hannah shot a cutting look in his direction before turning her attention back to Olivia. "What are you talking about, dear?" she asked, her voice softening in an attempt to control the situation. "Prometheus, Mom," said Olivia, feeling a chill as she pronounced the name of the project. "I know about the project. I know about Olympus. And I know that Dad's accident wasn't an accident." The silence that followed seemed to fill the entire mansion. Hannah looked at her daughter as if truly seeing her for the first time. "Richard," she finally said, without taking her eyes off Olivia, "you have no idea what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing," he replied calmly. "I'm fulfilling a promise I made to Anthony." Hannah walked to a nearby table, pouring herself a shot of whiskey, which she drank in one gulp. When she turned around again, her face was composed, almost serene. "Let's talk in the library," she suggested. "It's a matter that requires privacy." The library was the heart of the Crawford mansion, with walls lined with rare books and dark wood furniture. Hannah closed the double doors behind them, activating a security system that acoustically isolated the environment. "What did Richard tell you?" she asked directly, sitting in a leather armchair. "Enough to know that you're involved with dangerous people," replied Olivia, with Thor sitting vigilantly by her side. "People who may have been responsible for Dad's death." Hannah observed her daughter for a long moment. "Olivia, the world isn't black and white like your father believed. Sometimes, to protect those we love, we need to make alliances with people we don't necessarily admire." "Alliances?" Olivia felt anger growing. "We're talking about corruption, Mom, electoral manipulation, sabotage. We're talking about stability." Hannah raised her voice, then took a deep breath, regaining her composure. "Your father was brilliant but naive. He believed that the truth, exposed abruptly, would bring justice. I knew it would only bring chaos." Richard, who until then had been observing in silence, stepped forward. "So you knew they were planning to silence him," he said, his voice laden with accusation. Hannah looked away. "I knew there were concerns. I tried to convince him to back off, to keep his discoveries to himself. But Anthony was stubborn," she turned to Olivia. "Like you. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We continue." The heavy silence in the library was interrupted by the soft sound of Thor, who approached Olivia, nudging his muzzle against her hand as if wanting to remind her that she wasn't alone. "Mom," Olivia's voice trembled slightly, but her words were firm. "You knew they were planning to harm Dad? And you did nothing?" Hannah stood up abruptly, walking to the window that overlooked the impeccably maintained garden. "It's not that simple, Olivia," she replied without turning around. "I thought they were just threats, tactics to pressure him. I never thought they would go so far as to—" Her voice faltered. "When did you realize it was serious?" asked Richard, his tone accusatory. "Before or after the helicopter crashed?" Hannah turned, facing him with cold eyes. "You think I would allow them to kill the father of my child, the man I loved?" Her voice was cutting. When I realized they might actually do something, it was already too late. Olivia felt tears spring to her eyes. Even without being able to see, she could feel the weight of her mother's words, the genuine pain behind them. "Why did you never tell me the truth?" she asked, softening her tone slightly. Hannah approached, kneeling before her daughter and taking her hands in hers. "To protect you, darling. The less you knew, the safer you would be." Thor emitted a low growl, distrustful of Hannah's approach. Olivia calmed him with a light touch. "It didn't work, did it?" Olivia reflected bitterly. "Dad left me the medallion, made me part of all this, whether you wanted it or not." Hannah released her daughter's hands, rising slowly. "He never told me about the medallion," she admitted, walking to a bookshelf. "But I always suspected there was something. Anthony was too meticulous not to have a plan B." She pressed a specific book, revealing a secret compartment. From inside, she removed a small carved wooden box. "This was hidden in his office. I found it weeks after the accident," explained Hannah, opening the box to reveal a device that looked like an antique pocket watch. "It's the second key." Richard approached, observing the object with amazement. "You had this the whole time and never said anything?" "Of course I didn't," replied Hannah, closing the box with a snap. "The fewer people who knew, the better. Besides, without all three keys, this object is useless. And the third key?" asked Olivia, leaning forward in her chair. Hannah and Richard exchanged a significant look. "Thor," Richard finally answered. "The third key is with Thor." As if understanding that he was the center of the conversation, the Rottweiler sat up straight, observing everyone with his attentive eyes. "What do you mean?" questioned Olivia, extending her hand to stroke the animal's fur. "Your father implanted a special microchip in Thor," explained Richard. "It's not just a common identification chip. It's a highly sophisticated encryption device. It can only be read by a specific scanner, which Anthony hid somewhere." Olivia absorbed each word, trying to process the complexity of her father's plan. "So, to access the complete Prometheus, we need my medallion, Mom's watch, and something hidden in Thor?" "Exactly," confirmed Hannah, sitting back down. "And we need to find the scanner to read Thor's chip." A reflective silence fell over the library as each of them considered the implications of those revelations. It was Hannah who finally broke. "Olivia, you need to understand something. Olympus isn't just a group of corrupt people. They have influence at all levels of power. If we decide to go forward with this, we'll be entering into war against some of the most powerful people in the country." "People who didn't hesitate to sabotage Dad's helicopter," completed Olivia, her determination evident. "We can't let them go unpunished." "I agree," said Richard, surprising both women, "but we need to be strategic. If we simply disclose what we know without having all the evidence, they'll destroy us before we can cause any real damage." Thor suddenly stood up, ears alert. Seconds later, the mansion's security system emitted a silent alert on Hannah's phone. "Someone has breached the outer perimeter," she informed, quickly consulting the device. "They appear to be professionals. They've bypassed the first layer of sensors." "It's Olympus," concluded Richard, rising quickly. "We need to get out of here. Now." Hannah went to a discreet panel on the wall, entering a code. "I'm activating the emergency protocols. We have about 5 minutes before they reach the main house." Olivia felt fear tighten her chest, but also a growing determination. Thor positioned himself by her side, as he always did in moments of danger. "Where are we going?" she asked, standing up with the help of her cane. Hannah exchanged a look with Richard, a silent communication passing between them. "To the only place where Olympus can't reach us," replied Hannah, moving quickly to a panel hidden behind a painting. The bunker that Anthony built beneath the mansion. The bookshelf slid silently to the side, revealing a narrow passage that spiraled downward. Hannah took the lead, activating lights that automatically illuminated the path. "Dad built this?" asked Olivia, incredulous, as Thor advanced by her side, familiar with the environment. "Your father was always a cautious man," replied Hannah. "He used to say that in our line of work, secrets are worth more than money." Richard closed the passage behind them, isolating them from the outside world. The muffled sound of the mansion's alarm system gradually diminished as they descended. "Thor knows this place," observed Olivia, noticing how the Rottweiler moved confidently down the steps. "Dad trained him here?" "Yes," confirmed Richard. "Anthony believed that Thor would be your most reliable protection, a guardian no one would suspect." After descending about 30 steps, they arrived at a reinforced metal door. Hannah positioned her hand on a biometric scanner. "Security system activated," announced a computerized voice. "Welcome, Hannah Crawford." The door opened with a slight hiss, revealing a surprisingly spacious and well-equipped environment. It seemed like a mixture of a high-tech laboratory and a comfortable apartment, with several computer screens on one wall, a small rest area with sofas, a kitchenette, and 2 doors that presumably led to other rooms. "Amazing," murmured Olivia, who, even without being able to see, felt the grandeur of the space through the acoustics and the change in temperature and air quality. "This was your father's true sanctuary," explained Hannah, guiding her to one of the sofas. "Here he developed the most sensitive parts of Prometheus." Thor settled at Olivia's feet, while Richard inspected the computers. "They've all been turned off since," Hannah hesitated, "since the accident. I didn't dare touch anything." "Good," said Richard, examining the equipment. "These systems probably have security protocols that could erase everything if accessed incorrectly." Olivia removed the medallion from her neck, feeling its weight in the palm of her hand. "How does this work? How do the 3 keys connect?" Hannah opened the wooden box, removing the antique watch. "From what Anthony explained to me once, each key contains a part of the decryption algorithm. Without all 3, it's impossible to access the complete data." Richard approached a device that looked like a sophisticated medical scanner in a corner of the laboratory. "I believe this is the reader for Thor's chip," he said, activating the device, which emitted a low hum as it turned on. Thor, as if recognizing the sound, walked to the device, sitting patiently beside it. "He knows what to do," observed Olivia, impressed with the animal's intelligence. Richard nodded, adjusting settings on the scanner. Anthony trained him to respond to specific commands. "Thor isn't just an extraordinary guide dog, he's practically a special agent." Hannah moved around the room with familiarity, accessing a hidden panel that opened a compartment in the wall. From inside, she retrieved a metallic case. "The portable scanner," she explained, bringing it to where they were. "We'll need it if we have to move." A heavy silence fell over the bunker as each absorbed the gravity of the situation. It was Olivia who finally broke it. "What exactly would the Prometheus project reveal? How serious is this information?" Hannah and Richard exchanged tense looks before responding. "Prometheus isn't just an electoral fraud detector," began Hannah, carefully choosing her words. "It's an advanced artificial intelligence system capable of tracking patterns of corruption, relating data from different sources to map entire networks of illicit influence. Your father discovered that Olympus not only manipulated elections," continued Richard, "they controlled Supreme Court nominations, directed billion-dollar bids, silenced opponents, all through a complex system of blackmail and coercion." "And this involves well-known people, politicians, businessmen?" asked Olivia, trying to grasp the scope of the conspiracy. "The most powerful in the country," confirmed Hannah, her voice laden with concern, "including Victor Mitchell, who was officially a minority partner in our company and your father's best friend." Olivia felt as if the ground was moving beneath her feet. Victor had been a constant presence in her home during her childhood, bringing extravagant gifts, telling fascinating stories of his travels. She called him Uncle Victor. Was he involved in Dad's accident? Hannah and Richard's silence was answer enough. A soft beep interrupted the tense moment. Hannah consulted a nearby security monitor. "They've entered the mansion," she informed. "The cameras show at least 6 armed men and—" She paused, paling. "Victor is with them." Thor emitted a low growl as if recognizing the name. "We need to act quickly," said Richard, turning his attention to the computers. "They won't find the entrance easily, but we also can't stay here indefinitely." What will we do then? Asked Olivia, holding her medallion tightly. We need to access Prometheus now, said Richard, moving quickly between the computers. It's our only chance. Hannah connected the main system, which came to life with an electronic purr. Multiple screens lit up simultaneously, displaying complex interfaces with lines of code and elaborate graphs. I prepared an emergency protocol, she explained, rapidly typing commands. If we can access Prometheus's main files, I can activate it. What kind of protocol? Asked Olivia, feeling Thor restless by her side. Your father created an automatic disclosure mechanism, replied Hannah, not taking her eyes off the screens. If activated, Prometheus's data will be sent simultaneously to trusted journalists in different countries, secure servers scattered around the world, and even to some foreign government agencies. Richard approached with a device that looked like a sophisticated dock. This is the connector for the keys, he explained, placing it on a central table. We need to insert the 3 pieces in the correct sequence. On the security screens, they could see Victor's men methodically searching the mansion, opening doors, checking each room with military precision. They know what they're looking for, observed Hannah, her voice tense. Victor always suspected the bunker, although Anthony never confirmed its existence. Olivia extended her medallion to Richard. Do we start with this? Actually, intervened Hannah, the order matters. First the watch, then the medallion, and, finally, Thor's chip. Hannah placed the antique watch in the appropriate slot of the device. A blue light pulsed softly, indicating recognition. So far, so good, she murmured, as Olivia handed over her medallion. When fitting the second piece, the device emitted a harmonic sound and more lights lit up in sequence, like a small technological symphony. Now, Thor, said Richard, guiding the Rottweiler to the scanner. Come on, buddy, you know what to do. Thor positioned himself patiently, allowing the scanner to pass over his neck. A beep confirmed the reading of the implanted microchip, transferring the data to the main system. The screens began to display a cascade of information, documents, photos, recordings, bank records, all connected by colored lines that formed a complex web of relationships. My God, whispered Hannah, watching the data materialize. Anthony got much more than we imagined. Richard enlarged one of the central nodes of the network, revealing Victor Mitchell's face, connected to dozens of politicians, judges, and businessmen. It's all true, he said, his voice choked with emotion. Olympus controls practically everything. A distant boom made everyone startle. On the security cameras, they saw that Victor's men had located the library and were carefully examining the bookshelves. They'll find the entrance soon, warned Hannah, turning to the computer. I need to initiate the disclosure protocol now. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, entering commands and passwords in precise sequence. A progress bar appeared on the main screen. Prometheus protocol. Initiating data transmission. 5% completed. How long will this take? Asked Olivia, feeling the tension grow in the environment. Approximately 10 minutes for the complete transmission, replied Hannah. The files are huge and are being sent through secure channels to avoid interception. Another boom, closer. On the cameras, they saw that Victor had found the bookshelf mechanism and the secret passage was being opened. They've discovered it, observed Richard, quickly checking a cabinet built into the wall. From inside, he retrieved 2 guns, handing one to Hannah. I'll delay them. You two stay here and ensure the transmission is completed. No, protested Hannah. It's too dangerous. We don't have a choice, he retorted, checking the gun. The spiral staircase is narrow. I can keep them busy long enough. Thor emitted a determined growl, positioning himself next to Richard. He wants to go with you, observed Olivia, sensing the animal's intention. Richard hesitated for a moment. He would be useful, but... Take him, decided Olivia, stroking the Rottweiler's head one last time. Thor was trained for this. He can help. Richard nodded, heading for the armored door with Thor by his side. Before leaving, he turned to Olivia. Your father would be proud of you, he said, with an emotion rarely seen in his usually serious countenance. Very proud. The door closed behind them, leaving mother and daughter alone in the bunker with the Prometheus system processing its crucial transmission. On the screen, 15% completed. "We'll make it, won't we?" asked Olivia, her voice betraying a mixture of hope and fear. Hannah approached, embracing her daughter for the first time in a long time with genuine affection. "We will, dear. Your father wouldn't have let us come this far if he wasn't certain of success." The sound of distant gunshots echoed through the stairwell. Hannah quickly moved away, checking the security cameras that showed Richard and Thor confronting Victor's men in the narrow passage. "They're buying us time," she said, returning to the computer. The progress bar marked 23% completed. Hannah opened a side panel, revealing an additional door. "This is a secondary exit," she explained. "It leads to a tunnel that will take us to the woods behind the property. If things get worse, we'll have to use it." "We can't just run away," protested Olivia. "Not without Richard and Thor." "Your father put you above everything, Olivia," replied Hannah, her tone softening. "Protecting you was his highest priority. That's why Thor has been with you from the beginning." The sound of gunshots abruptly ceased, leaving an oppressive silence that seemed to fill the entire bunker. Hannah and Olivia remained motionless, alert to any sound coming from the staircase. On the main screen, the progress bar advanced slowly. 47% completed. "Something's wrong," murmured Hannah, consulting the cameras. The image showed the empty staircase, with no sign of Richard, Thor, or the intruders. A metallic sound at the bunker's main door made both of them startle. Hannah gripped her gun, pointing it at the entrance, while positioning Olivia behind her. "If it's Victor, I'll shoot without hesitation," she said, her voice laden with determination. The light of the biometric scanner next to the door blinked, changing from red to green. The door began to open slowly. Thor was the first to enter, his black fur gleaming under the bunker lights. Behind him, Richard appeared, breathless, with a cut on his arm, but apparently well. "Richard!" exclaimed Olivia, recognizing his footsteps. "Are you okay?" "Yes," he replied, quickly closing the door behind him. "We managed to contain them on the stairs, but not for long. Victor brought professionals, ex-military probably." Thor ran to Olivia, rubbing his head against her hand as if wanting to assure her he was unharmed. "And Victor?" asked Hannah, still not completely lowering her gun. "He stayed back, letting his men be on the front line." Richard checked the main screen, 58% completed. "How much longer?" "Approximately 4 minutes," replied Hannah, turning her attention back to the computers. "But they'll certainly try to force their way in before that." As if to confirm her fear, a strong boom shook the armored door, followed by another. "Explosives," concluded Richard, moving quickly to a nearby control console. "They're trying to force their way in." Hannah typed additional commands, accelerating the data transmission. "I'm compressing the remaining files," she explained. "The quality will be a bit lower, but the transmission will be faster." The armored door trembled again with another impact. Small fissures began to appear around the edges. "It won't hold much longer," warned Richard. "We need to consider the secondary exit." "Not yet," insisted Hannah, not taking her eyes off the screen showing 67% completed. "We need to ensure that at least the main data is transmitted." Olivia approached Thor, kneeling to embrace him. The Rottweiler remained vigilant, his body tense, ready to protect her at any cost. "Dad," she whispered, pressing the medallion between her fingers, "we'll succeed, I promise." A stronger explosion made everyone duck. The armored door partially gave way, creating an opening through which armed men could be seen trying to enter. Richard responded with precise shots, forcing them to temporarily retreat. "Hannah," he shouted, reloading his gun. "If you have a plan B, now's the time to activate it." Hannah looked at the screen. 78% completed. She made a quick decision, activating an additional protocol. "I'm prioritizing the most crucial documents," she explained, concentrating the transmission on files that directly prove Olympus's involvement in electoral manipulation and in what happened to Anthony. Another impact on the door. This time the opening widened considerably. "Come," called Richard, retreating toward the secondary exit. "We can't wait any longer." Hannah checked the screen one last time. 85% completed. Critical data successfully transmitted. "We did it," she said, a smile of relief lighting up her face. "The essential data has already been sent. The rest is complementary." She activated one last command, locking the system so no one could interrupt it, and ran to join Olivia and Richard. Thor was the first to enter the tunnel of the secondary exit, leading the way as if he knew every inch of the route. Olivia followed him, guided by Richard, with Hannah closing the rear. The tunnel was narrow and damp, slightly sloping upward. After what seemed like an eternity walking in darkness, guided only by Hannah's flashlight, they reached a metal ladder that led to a camouflaged exit. Richard climbed up first, checking if it was safe. Then he helped Olivia climb up with Thor right behind. They emerged in a small clearing inside the woods that surrounded the Crawford property. The cool night air of Boston was received with relief by all. "What now?" asked Olivia, feeling the breeze on her face. Hannah consulted her cell phone, which showed multiple notifications appearing in real time. "It's starting," she said, with a mixture of admiration and apprehension. "Prometheus's data is being disclosed. There are already reports being published on international portals about a corruption network in the US involving Olympus." Richard checked his own phone, nodding. "It's working. Several journalists are sharing documents, confirming the authenticity. The internet is on fire." A helicopter appeared in the distance, its headlights cutting through the darkness of the night. "It's not the police," observed Richard, after examining the model with his trained eyes. "Must be journalists. News spreads fast." Hannah approached. Olivia, placing her hands on her daughter's shoulders. "Your father did it, dear. We did it. The truth can no longer be contained." Olivia felt tears running down her cheeks, a mixture of relief, sadness, and above all, a deep sense of justice. "What happens to us now?" she asked, hugging Thor, who remained faithfully by her side. "We'll have to answer many questions," acknowledged Hannah. "I especially will have to explain my involvement with Olympus. It won't be easy." "But we'll be together," stated Olivia, extending her hand to her mother. "And the truth has finally come to light." Richard watched the skies, where more helicopters were beginning to appear, and cell phones didn't stop receiving notifications about the bombshell revelations that were dominating all media outlets. "Victor and the other members of Olympus won't escape this time," he said. "The evidence is irrefutable." Thor emitted a low sound, as if understanding that his mission had been successfully completed. Olivia knelt down, hugging him tightly. "Thank you, friend," she whispered in his ear. "Dad knew exactly what he was doing when he chose you as my protector." As Boston's night sky lit up with the lights of helicopters and police cars began to arrive in the distance, Olivia, Hannah, Richard, and Thor remained together in the small clearing, united by a legacy of courage and by the determination of a man who, even after his passing, had found a way to bring justice. Olivia's medallion gleamed under the moonlight, a silent symbol that no matter how much the forces of shadows tried to manipulate a country's destiny, the truth, patiently built and protected, had the power to finally break free and illuminate even the deepest darkness. "It's over," said Hannah, looking at the horizon where the city lights twinkled. "A new chapter begins now." "No," Olivia gently corrected, with wisdom beyond her years. "It's not over. It's just the beginning of the true story my father wanted to tell." If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us what city you're watching from.